What would you do if, on a stormy night, you found a young mother clutching two fragile babies in the rain, too proud to beg, too strong to break? Would you walk away or would you take her in, not knowing that her secret could change your life forever? The rain was merciless that night, the kind that made even the city's wealthiest retreat into their mansions with fireplaces burning. The gas station on the outskirts of town was nearly deserted, its fluorescent lights flickering against the sheen of wet pavement. Ethan Cole's black Bentley purred quietly by the pump, a sharp contrast to the old, dented sedans lined under the awning. Ethan stepped out, adjusting his tailored coat. The billionaire had just left a tense dinner with board members and wanted nothing more than silence, a cigarette, and the open road. His world was one of power and precision, but even with billions in his account, loneliness clung to him like the damp fog rolling through the streets. As he leaned against his car, lighting his cigarette, he noticed her. A slim figure sat on the curb near the side wall of the gas station, clutching something close to her chest. Ethan squinted through the sheets of rain and realized it wasn't just one bundle, it was two. Twin babies swaddled in worn blankets, their small cries muffled against the storm. The mother, young with delicate features, held them both tightly. Her clothes were soaked, her hair clinging to her face. Yet there was a quiet fierceness in her posture. She rocked the children, whispering softly, shielding them with her thin frame as though her body alone could keep the night's cold at bay. People passed by her, some stealing pitying glances, others smirking cruelly. A teenage boy tossed an empty soda can in her direction. "Get a job, lady," he sneered, running back to his friends. The young woman ignored him. She kissed the top of one baby's head and adjusted the other's blanket with steady hands. Not once did she beg, not once did she stretch out her arm for help. Ethan felt a strange pull, something he couldn't explain. He'd seen plenty of poverty, charity galas paraded pictures of suffering every week, but this was different. Here was a woman clearly on the edge, yet her pride remained unbroken. He dropped his cigarette into a puddle, striding toward her. His polished shoes splashed against the wet ground. "Do you need help?" Ethan's voice was firm but not unkind. The woman looked up, her eyes startling him. They were a clear, piercing hazel, filled with exhaustion but also something unshakable, dignity. "I don't want pity," she said quickly, her voice hoarse but steady. "It's not pity," Ethan replied. "It's—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. He wasn't used to this kind of interaction. Deals, contracts, negotiations, that was his world. Not conversations with rain-soaked strangers at gas stations. Concern. "You have two babies out here in the storm." The twins stirred, one letting out a weak whimper. She hushed them immediately, then glanced away from Ethan. "We'll manage. We always do." Something inside him tightened. He could have walked away, should have walked away. This wasn't his problem. But the image of the twins, fragile and cold in their mother's arms, struck deeper than he expected. "Listen," Ethan said, softening his tone. "I have a spare house not far from here. It's warm. You can stay the night, at least until the rain stops." Her head snapped toward him. "What? What do you want from me?" Suspicion sharpened her features. Ethan was taken aback. "Nothing. I don't want anything." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze searching his face as though weighing his sincerity. Then she shook her head. "People always want something. I don't need saving." Ethan almost smiled despite the situation. She had fire, that same quiet strength that had caught his attention in the first place. "Maybe not," he said. "But your children do." Her lips trembled slightly. She looked down at the twins, who had fallen back into uneasy sleep. The rain hammered harder, soaking the hem of her jeans. Finally she whispered, "Just one night. That's all." "Just one night," Ethan agreed. He extended his hand. She didn't take it immediately, but after a hesitant pause, she shifted the babies carefully and allowed him to help her to her feet. Her hand was cold, but her grip was firm. As they walked toward his Bentley, Ethan noticed how she carried herself, not like a beggar, but like someone who had once known better days. She cradled her children with protective instinct, her head high despite her appearance. He opened the car door, and for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt something stir in the quiet chamber of his chest. Not pity, not charity. Something else, something he couldn't name yet. The rain continued to fall, but inside the Bentley, warmth and silence wrapped around them. The twins slept peacefully and the young woman leaned back, exhaustion finally pulling her eyes shut. Ethan glanced at her reflection in the glass. Who was she? Why did it feel like fate had dropped her in his path tonight? For the first time in a long time, the billionaire felt that the night might change the course of his life. The drive through the storm was silent except for the steady hum of the Bentley's engine and the rhythmic patter of rain against the windshield. Ethan kept glancing at the rearview mirror. The young woman cradled her twins, her chin resting lightly on one baby's head. Her eyelids drooped, exhaustion tugging her toward sleep, but each time the car shifted lanes she tightened her hold instinctively, as though the world might snatch her children away if she let go for even a second. Ethan's home for the night was not his grand estate downtown. He didn't want the media or nosy neighbors involved yet. Instead, he steered toward one of his lesser-known properties, a two-story townhouse tucked discreetly behind iron gates on a quiet street. When the car rolled to a stop, the woman stirred. "Where are we?" she asked softly. "A place you can stay tonight," Ethan answered, pushing open his door. He retrieved an umbrella and hurried to her side, shielding her and the babies from the rain. Inside, warmth greeted them, golden lights, clean wood floors, and the faint scent of cedar. The townhouse wasn't extravagant compared to Ethan's mansion, but it was cozy. He gestured toward the couch and she carefully lowered herself, adjusting her twins with practiced ease. "I'll get you towels," Ethan said, disappearing briefly and returning with soft linens. She accepted them, drying her hair and gently patting the babies. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice quieter now, as though admitting gratitude was harder than facing the storm. Ethan noticed the way she spoke, not timid but careful, as if each word cost her something. "Do you want tea? Coffee?" he offered. "Water is fine," she replied. He poured her a glass, setting it on the coffee table. She drank slowly, her hands trembling slightly from the cold. "What's your name?" Ethan asked finally. She hesitated, then said, "Clara?" "Clara," Ethan repeated, testing the sound. "And the twins?" She glanced at her children, a small smile softening her tired features. "This is Daniel. And this is Hope." Beautiful names, Ethan thought. He studied her, noticing the sharpness in her gaze despite the weariness. She wasn't simple, not the kind of woman who drifted without thought. There was intelligence there, something deep and guarded. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to," Ethan said carefully, "but how did you end up at a gas station in the middle of the night with two infants?" Clara's eyes flickered, the shadows of memory passing over her face. For a moment Ethan thought she would ignore the question. Then she sighed. "Life doesn't always go the way you plan," she said vaguely. "People you trust don't always stay." Her answer was deliberate, offering no details. Ethan sensed she was hiding something, but he respected the wall she built. He had his own walls after all. The twins stirred again. Clara rocked them gently, humming a lullaby. Ethan sat back, listening. Her voice was soft, melodic, and carried a weight of old sorrow. "You have a way with them," Ethan remarked. "They're all I have," Clara said simply. The word struck him. For all his billions, Ethan realized he had no one who truly belonged to him, not in the way Clara belonged to these children and they to her. As the night deepened, Ethan brought her a spare blanket and showed her the guest room. "It's not much, but it's warm," he said. Clara glanced at the bed, then at him. "You've already done too much. I'll sleep on the floor with them." Ethan frowned. "Nonsense. You'll sleep in the bed. I'll take the couch if it makes you more comfortable." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan paused. He could have said 100 things, charity, guilt, curiosity, but none felt right. Instead he said the truth. "Because I couldn't leave you there. And because I don't think anyone should carry that kind of burden alone." Something flickered in Clara's gaze, surprise, maybe even a touch of vulnerability. But she said nothing more. She tucked the twins onto the bed, layering them with the blanket, then sat beside them, brushing her fingers over their cheeks. From the doorway, Ethan watched her silhouette. She looked like a woman carved from both strength and fragility, someone who had been tested but not broken. Later, as he lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, Ethan found himself restless. He thought of Clara's proud refusal at the gas station, her suspicion of his motives, the way she sang to her children. Unlike everyone else in his life, she wanted nothing from him, at least nothing material. And for reasons he couldn't yet explain, that fact unsettled him more than anything. Morning sunlight filtered through the townhouse blinds, painting golden stripes across the living room floor. Ethan sat at the kitchen counter, nursing a black coffee and scrolling through his phone. His company's stock tickers flashed across the screen, but for once, numbers failed to hold his attention. A soft sound drew his gaze toward the guest room. Clara stepped out quietly, her hair pulled into a loose knot, her clothes still damp from the night before. She looked exhausted but not defeated. In her arms, Daniel fussed, while Hope rested peacefully against her shoulder. Ethan stood, instinctively moving to help. Do you need? I've got it, Clara interrupted firmly, shifting Daniel with practiced ease. Her tone wasn't rude, just matter of fact. Ethan paused, then smiled faintly. Stubborn, aren't you? Her hazel eyes flickered with a trace of amusement. Independent. She settled on the couch, adjusting the twins, and for the first time Ethan noticed how carefully she organized her small world. She used one folded towel as a pillow for the babies, another as a makeshift diaper bag. Every move she made was deliberate, efficient, like someone who had learned to survive on little but never at the cost of dignity. Ethan set his coffee aside. There's food here. You must be hungry. Clara hesitated, then nodded once. For the twins first. Do you have milk? He opened the fridge, suddenly realizing he had nothing suitable for infants. I'll send someone. No, Clara interrupted again. They'll bring the wrong kind. I'll go. Ethan frowned. You can't drag them out in the cold again. Clara looked up at him, her expression steady. Then take me. But I decide what's right for them. Something in her tone, protective, unyielding, made Ethan step back. This wasn't a woman who surrendered control easily. He grabbed his keys. Fine. Let's go. At the grocery store, Clara moved through the aisles with surprising efficiency. She compared formulas, checking ingredients and expiration dates with a sharp eye. Ethan followed with the cart, feeling oddly out of place. You know a lot about this, he remarked. Clara shrugged. When you're responsible for lives that small, you learn fast. No one teaches you. You figure it out. Her words carried a quiet strength, and Ethan found himself studying her. Most people he knew leaned on others, or on him, for answers. Clara relied only on herself. At the register, Ethan reached for his wallet, but Clara stopped him. No. He blinked. No. I'll pay. She reached into her worn bag and pulled out a small wad of crumpled bills. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Ethan hesitated. You don't have to. I do, Clara cut in firmly. I won't let my children grow up thinking someone else's money always saved them. For a moment Ethan said nothing. Then quietly he allowed her to place the bills on the counter. Back at the townhouse, Clara prepared bottles with steady hands while Ethan watched from the doorway. She worked methodically, almost like a scientist measuring ingredients. When Daniel fussed, she distracted him with a gentle hum, her voice low and warm. You should rest, Ethan said. She didn't look up. Rest is a luxury. Responsibility isn't. The simplicity of her statement hit Ethan harder than he expected. He sat across from her, studying the twins. They're beautiful, he said honestly. Clara's gaze softened as she glanced at them. They saved me, she whispered. Ethan tilted his head. Saved you? Yes, she said, her voice distant. If not for them, I wouldn't have had a reason to keep going. Silence stretched between them. Ethan felt an unfamiliar weight in his chest, not pity but respect. He realized he'd misjudged her. Clara wasn't fragile. She was unyielding. Later that afternoon, while the twins napped, Clara found a newspaper on the counter. Her eyes scanned the business section and she frowned slightly. Your company's numbers aren't matching the market projections, she remarked casually. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? She tapped the page. Your competitors' move last quarter means their valuation will spike. If you don't diversify your investments, you'll feel it within 6 months. Ethan stared at her. How do you know that? Clara shrugged, folding the paper neatly. I read. Numbers tell stories if you know how to listen. Ethan leaned back, intrigued. Very few people, even seasoned investors, could analyze trends so quickly. You're full of surprises, Clara. She looked at him evenly. Don't make assumptions about people based on where you find them. For the first time in years, Ethan laughed, genuinely laughed. Not at her, but at the blunt truth in her words. That night, as he lay awake again on the couch, Ethan replayed the day in his mind. Clara wasn't just surviving, she was sharp, disciplined, and fiercely protective. She didn't want his money. She didn't even want his help. And that was what unsettled him most. For once, someone saw him not as a billionaire, but simply as a man standing in the rain. Weeks slipped by like pages turning in a book neither of them expected to write. What had started as one night of shelter grew into something more. Ethan never asked Clara to leave, and Clara never pretended she was staying forever. Yet, somehow their lives began to intertwine. Clara found small ways to contribute around the townhouse. She cooked simple meals, tidied up, and organized things with meticulous care. Ethan, used to housekeepers and personal assistants, was startled at how different it felt to have someone prepare a meal not because they were paid, but because they cared. At night, when the twins were finally asleep, Ethan and Clara would sit at the kitchen table. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. But in the silences, Ethan found a peace he had never known in boardrooms or luxury resorts. Clara didn't fill space with flattery or empty words. When she spoke, it mattered. One evening, Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching Clara sip tea. "You know," he said, "I'm used to people wanting something from me. Money, power, status. But you," he shook his head, a smile tugging at his lips. "You want none of that." Clara's gaze held his steadily. "Money doesn't impress me. Character does." Her words cut deeper than she intended. For a man who had built his life on wealth, Ethan realized it was the first time someone had challenged him to be more than his fortune. It didn't take long for the outside world to notice. Paparazzi spotted Ethan at a grocery store with Clara and the twins. Rumors spread like wildfire. The billionaire has a new mistress. A single mother with babies in tow. Tabloids screamed headlines. Talk shows mocked her. Gold digger. Opportunist. The woman who trapped Ethan Cole. Ethan's board members were furious. "This will ruin your reputation," one of them barked during a meeting. "She's a liability. She'll drain you dry." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think she wants my money? She refuses it at every turn." "Then why is she still in your home?" another sneered. Ethan leaned forward, his voice icy. "Because I asked her to be." The board fell silent. For once, Ethan didn't care about optics or stockholder confidence. Clara and the twins mattered more. But Clara felt the weight of the judgment. One night, after putting the twins to bed, she stood by the window, staring at the city lights. "They hate me," she whispered. Ethan walked up behind her. "Let them." She turned to him, her eyes shimmering with unspoken fear. "I don't want to ruin your life. You've worked so hard. You don't deserve the mockery." Ethan reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Clara, listen to me. All my life I've had people admire me for the wrong reasons. You're the first person who looks at me and sees me. I don't care what they say. I care about you. And I care about those babies." Her breath caught, but she shook her head. "You don't mean that. You're just saying it because you feel responsible." "No," Ethan's tone was firm, unwavering. "I'm saying it because I love you." The words hung in the air, startling even him. He hadn't planned to say them, but once spoken, he knew they were true. Clara's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then whispered, "Ethan?" He cupped her cheek gently. "Marry me." Clara's eyes widened. "Marry you?" "Yes," Ethan said. "Not because the world wants it. Not because it looks good on paper. Because I can't imagine my life without you and those children. Let them call you what they want. They don't know you like I do." Clara's defenses crumbled. 4 months she had fought to keep her walls intact, to survive without leaning on anyone. But standing there, in the arms of a man who saw past her circumstances, she realized she didn't have to fight alone anymore. Tears slid down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes. Their wedding was quiet, intimate. No sprawling guest list, no cameras, no lavish display of wealth. Just a small ceremony in the townhouse garden, with a handful of people Ethan trusted. Clara wore a simple white dress, her twins nestled in her maid of honor's arms. As Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, the whispers of doubt still swirled outside their gates. But inside, all he saw was her strength, her courage, her quiet dignity. When the vows were spoken and the kiss sealed their union, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not victory. Not conquest. But peace. He wasn't marrying a homeless woman with twins. He was marrying Clara, the woman who had changed everything. Months into their marriage, Ethan felt a strange kind of contentment he'd never known. The townhouse, once a quiet retreat, now echoed with laughter, cries, and the tiny footsteps of Daniel and Hope learning to walk. Clara moved gracefully through it all, balancing motherhood with quiet strength. Ethan had shielded her from the tabloids as best he could, but whispers followed them everywhere. At charity events, socialites whispered behind gloved hands. At business dinners, partners smirked, calling her the billionaire's burden. Clara bore it with dignity. She never raised her voice, never fought back. Yet Ethan could see the weight pressing on her shoulders. One evening, an invitation arrived, the annual Global Philanthropy Gala. It was the event of the year, an evening where the world's wealthiest gathered to showcase their charitable work. Ethan rarely attended, but this time he wanted to. "Are you sure?" Clara asked, holding the embossed envelope. "These people don't want me there." Ethan took her hand. "Then we'll give them no choice. You're my wife. You belong at my side." The gala was dazzling, crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, champagne glasses clinking under golden light. Ethan looked sharp in a tailored tuxedo, but all eyes turned when Clara entered. She wore a midnight blue gown, simple but elegant, her hazel eyes gleaming under the lights. The whispers began immediately. That's her. The homeless girl with twins. Look how far she's climbed. Ethan squeezed her hand, ignoring them. Together they stepped into the crowd. But as the evening unfolded, something unusual happened. Guests who once dismissed Clara began to approach her, not out of curiosity but recognition. Mrs. Sinclair? One older gentleman stammered, nearly spilling his drink. Clara froze, her fingers tightening on Ethan's arm. I thought, you disappeared years ago, the man continued. Your family's foundation. Are you returning? Ethan blinked, confused. Sinclair? He repeated. Clara's lips parted, but before she could answer, another voice chimed in. Clara Sinclair? The Clara Sinclair? The Sinclair conglomerate heiress? The room erupted in murmurs. The Sinclair fortune? The missing daughter? The widow with twins? Ethan turned to his wife, his chest tightening. Clara, what is this? Clara's hazel eyes met his. For a moment time seemed to stop. Then she exhaled slowly, as if finally surrendering a burden she had carried too long. I wasn't lying when I said life didn't go as planned, she whispered. The room had gone silent, all attention fixed on her. Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Yes, she said clearly. I am Clara Sinclair, daughter of William Sinclair, widow of Jonathan Hale. And these are my children, my husband's children. She glanced at Daniel and Hope, who slept peacefully in the arms of a trusted nanny. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed. Ethan's mind reeled. The Sinclair name was legendary, owners of a multinational conglomerate with investments spanning industries. 4 years, the heiress had been absent from public life, rumors swirling about her disappearance after her husband's death. You're a billionaire, Ethan said, his voice low, meant only for her. Clara turned back to him, her eyes brimming with emotion. I am. But I walked away. My late husband's death was complicated. My family's betrayal even more so. I couldn't raise my children in that world of greed and deceit. So I left. I hid. I wanted to know if love, real love, could exist without fortune. The truth sank in like a tidal wave. All this time he had thought he was the rescuer, the protector. But Clara had been testing him too. Why didn't you tell me? Ethan asked, his throat dry. Clara's voice broke. Because I needed to know you loved me, not Clara Sinclair, not the money, not the empire. Just me. The woman you found on the curb in the rain. For a long moment Ethan said nothing. The crowd watched, hungry for scandal. But slowly Ethan's lips curved into something unexpected. Laughter. Low, genuine, disbelieving laughter. You mean, he said, still chuckling, I thought I was saving you, and all along, you were saving me from myself. Clara's tears spilled, but Ethan pulled her into his arms, kissing her forehead as the cameras clicked furiously. You could have been anyone, Clara. Billionaire or beggar. I'd still choose you. The whispers shifted. No longer mocking but awed. Clara Sinclair had returned, not broken, not desperate, but stronger than ever, with a husband who had proven his love when she had nothing. That night, as they left the gala, Ethan held her hand tighter than ever. The secret was out. The world knew Clara's name again. But for Ethan, the revelation didn't change a thing. If anything, it deepened his respect. Clara wasn't just his wife, she was his equal, his partner, his match in every way. The morning after the gala, headlines screamed, Clara Sinclair returns with a secret marriage. Paparazzi crowded their gates, journalists clamored for interviews, and investors speculated wildly. Ethan expected chaos. Instead, Clara walked through it with her head high, twins in her arms, calm as ever. They'll talk today, she told him softly, but tomorrow they'll see us for who we are. And she was right. Within weeks, the narrative shifted. Business magazines praised Clara's resilience, calling her the heiress who chose love over legacy. Others admired Ethan, the billionaire who married a woman without knowing her wealth, and loved her still. At their first joint press conference, Ethan took Clara's hand. We didn't choose each other for fortune. We chose each other for faith, strength, and love. The rest is noise. Cameras flashed as Clara smiled, her eyes shining. Behind the spotlight, their life returned to something beautifully ordinary, playdates in the garden, late-night talks over tea, laughter echoing through the halls. They weren't just a billionaire and an heiress. They were two souls who had found home in each other, proving that love, tested by secrets and storms, was the truest wealth of all.